Hello and welcome to another Austin Software Cooperatives meetup, Wednesday, March 6th. We're going to be talking about the book, The Death of Competition, but specifically personal ecosystems, which is a it's really a piece of the appendix of the book. We made a video. Hopefully everybody reviewed the video. And I'm just a little backstory. Some of the concepts, they come from this book, but they also come from two other books. One of them is Thinking for Change by John Maxwell, and another one is Professional Services Firms um, by David Meister. So they all seem to be talking about roughly, there's a piece in each one of these books where they talk about roughly the same thing. They cut ideas into kind of a triad that might be a conceit, I guess, that they just so happen to do that. Maybe they read each other's books, but they didn't reference each other. But they seem to have three levels of moving ideas through kind of a pipeline from inception to some type of validation and then an execution. But the Jim Henson story, I find to be much more compelling than the other two. So I dived in. Did you guys have anything? Well, let me just ask, kind of just off the top of your head, what were some of your thoughts? What jumped out at you when you looked at the video? I mean, anything counterintuitive, anything intuitive? Did it all seem just obvious? What?
I think I think a lot of it is I don't know what's the word. I think it's intuitive and obvious, but not but I wasn't practicing it. I wasn't and I guess I wasn't like it makes sense basically. Essentially I was according to how this was laid out and what these guys, how Jim Henson essentially like approached his network or ecosystem. We all have, well, I have lots of people I reach out to, but I guess I wasn't using or like interacting with them efficiently. Essentially, like I would spend a lot of times with these roles flipped, go to analysis, analyst, and have them asked to work with them to get something done, or go to which is maybe not the best thing to do, or go to someone like that's in my kitchen cabinet for advice, and try to talk to them and get them to see my point of view other than what they should truly mean. I don't know. Essentially, what I got from it was it's a very interesting approach, and I could be a little bit more efficient with my network. I'll just leave it at that.
Great. Anyone else? Anything intuitive or counterintuitive that jumped out at you? All right, so I'm gonna dive in here. Jim Henson. Let's see if I can. I don't think I can do that. And let's just leave it like that. So this over here on the left, Jim Henson. He did the Muppets. He also was a core contributor to Sesame Street, which might be more familiar to some of you. Kermit the Frog. He invented Kermit the Frog. I think he invented Ernie and a couple of other characters on Sesame Street. It's kind of novel what he was doing. There weren't other people using puppets like how he was. So a lot of he did a bunch of other things too, but we're just you're familiar with Kermit, so um, he had a network, and if you watch the video, there's the kitchen cabinet, the analysts, and the agents. He had a lot of the same issues that we have as a professional. All kinds of he's an artist, right? But there's all types of things that are changing within his field. He's introducing something novel. People are saying, hey, you're crazy trying to use puppets inside of film and these types of things. They're one of the things that pertains to our group is there's a concept of, let's say, within a traditional hierarchy, you've got the what I would like to say, the smart person on the top, and then everybody else below. So you got a hierarchy. But then you have a shadow, and anyone that's worked in corporate world, you've got a shadow hierarchy where it's the people that actually know, they have the knowledge, and they actually get things done. And you've got to know how to traverse that shadow hierarchy in order to get things moved. Um, and that doesn't really work in situations where you know um, you have to get things done. Like definitely Hollywood, I guess, where you have to pull the right strings and you have to know the right people. And then you also have flat organizations, which is kind of what in cooperative is. It's more decentralized. People can vote and all these types of things. So traditionally, the way that information flows, the I guess the argument is that the information flows more towards the top of the hierarchy, and then it disseminates to where it's needed down, kind of like a tree. And some information is given to some people, and some information is not. And then you kind of keep the underlings from being confused. Within a more flat organization, people have to take it upon themselves to kind of create their own filters. So I guess the name of the game is filtering. How do you filter? How do you understand the information that you're bombarded with? And then how do you process it? And then how you execute on it. So you can say that that's the scanning and then the analyzing and the acting. So that's kind of what Jim Henson intuitively did. Within his circle, he had that, let's say, I'm going to maybe, well, I'll get ahead of myself to start talking about what he did in each component. But he separated the different pieces. He had a closer component, which is the kitchen cabinet. And then he had the analysts and he had the agents. And then the tough decisions were the things that he had to do. So this first portion, does anybody have any questions? Okay, cool. I'm going to move the kitchen cabinet. So I guess the example for Jim Henson, he had he had close friends from that were technologists inside of IBM. in his circle. He had his in the kitchen cabinet. He had his wife in the kitchen cabinet. He had a manager that he worked with closely and some others, but they were all trusted friends, allies, idea friendly people. And like it says, he they handled kind of some of of course they did a lot of brainstorming and everything like that. He bounced ideas off of them, but there are also things that you wouldn't think, or well, it's counterintuitive to me, um, that you kind of need at this phase, which is like diplomacy, people arguing, or and things needing to be resolved, emotional support where people just want to give up on things. But this 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 phase is a phase where they're kind of, for me, it's kind of difficult because I kind of think of where this is kind of a vulnerable phase where there are dilemmas that are really hard, maybe insurmountable. People that are smarter than you gave up on these dilemmas, or they say that they don't work, or you shouldn't try them. But then you have uh, this group where they're kind of like they're the kinds of people where they say, "Oh no, I know you can do it. I believe in you," and all of these things. So personally, for me, that group kind of, when someone says, "I know you can do it," I kind of immediately think, "Oh, that's kind of like what your mom would say," and that sounds silly to me, kind of thing. But this group. That's where they belong. And if it wasn't for this group, we would just be stuck in a rut. We wouldn't actually attack the types of dilemmas that just stay around for years or decades or centuries. Um, so this group forms the right question. They don't try to answer the question. They try to say, "Here's the way you should think about the problem." Right? So they brainstorm and they create hypotheses. So does anybody else have any ideas or thoughts about this phase? Does it seem intuitive? Does it seem counterintuitive? I think one thing is, for me, having read these different books, I tend to think most people think you can just do all of these things, and everyone should do all of them, and everyone is good or not good at all of them, or something like that. And don't I don't think that that's true. I think that you can be in any one of these phases for different areas, but I don't think that everybody obviously is in every phase for all the areas. And I don't think you should try to be in all three. What do you think about that?
Are you saying if you may be someone you may be in one of these areas for someone else, like you're an analyst for someone or in the kitchen cabinet?
Exactly.
Okay. So you may be, yeah. So you could be a trusted friend, but you may not be the expert for someone, and whatever that means under analyst.
Exactly.
Okay.
And let me just get ahead of myself. I think to say why I think some of this stuff is important. So you got the kitchen cabinet, you got the analysts, you got the agents. I think you can make a definition of a charlatan as someone who comes to you and says, hey, here's an idea. You work it out with them. And then they ask you, turn around and ask you, and we're gonna talk about this, but they're gonna turn around and ask you, hey, do you think that this will actually work? It's kind of your field. And you'll be like, yeah. And then they'll turn around and ask you, why don't you do this for me? And I'll let you keep some of the profit or something like that. Right? They'll do all three of these things. You will be in all three of these things, or you might do all these three things for someone else. Right? That is what I would say is a charlatan. It's somebody that is basically, oftentimes people think that that's the idea person. So what I like about this way of categorizing people is it gives a place for the idea person. Otherwise, the idea person to me is a charlatan. It's the type person who tries to get you in all three of these things and then says, yeah, now go ahead and execute that for me. And then you take all the risk, and maybe if something happens, then I'll let you keep some of that. What do you guys think of that?
So the idea person would be Jim Henson.
Jim Henson in this, he's in the kitchen cabinet, obviously, but he's also the person that does the tough decisions. So he's not just the idea person. In the, let's say, in the good sense, the idea person is the people that are in the kitchen cabinet. In the pejorative sense, in the negative sense that I was just saying before, they're not in any of these categories. They're kind of a person who says, like what you're familiar with. Hey, I got an idea. We've got, let's have it to where let's create an app where they can make pictures, and then they can post pictures of their families. And then we can share, and then you can have a network of people with a picture of their let's make Facebook basically. And, and then they tell you to do all of it. So that's not a true kitchen cabinet person. That's an invalid one. So my point was that this makes an area for, I'm kind of hostile to the idea person. This makes an area where they're valid.
Hey, it's Abraham here. By the way, your screen just went away. But without going to the Charlatan area, I'm just thinking through, if you're working with a group of people, having certain people that are more thinking of them as kitchen cabinet for me, and then people broader out that I'd bring in on certain projects or certain ideas, going into analysts, getting feedback from people who have more experience with certain user stories or certain features we're thinking about doing, and then all the way out to doing agents where I'm actually wanting to get work done. It's kind of it's a sense like a project management thought process.
Yeah, it's kind of possibly. Yeah, definitely when you're going all the way through.
So it's not like I'm trying to get different people to play different roles. I'm actually naturally thinking people in different terms, depending on what I'm thinking through here. But I can definitely see where you could have I'm in someone else's kitchen cabinet and I play that role for them. Another person uses me as an analyst, and then professionally I'm used to actually execute work. So I'm an agent in some certain to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the guy was talking, I wasn't thinking about someone trying to switch my roles around. I was just thinking of personally who I think is in my personal kitchen cabinet, and then different people I go out to and reach out for different analysis and different takes of things, whether it's technology or personal life or business interest. and then agents, people I'm actually hiring to do stuff. So those things kind of made sense from a functional standpoint.
Right. Yeah. So like the kitchen cabinet, one attribute, attribute of a kitchen cabinet member is they're not going to kill your idea on the vine, right? So you come up with something, they're not the kind of person that's going to be like, yeah, that's stupid, or they're just Debbie Downer, that kind of thing. They're kind of more they let it grow. So that's one attribute to keep that in mind for that group. The analysts, let's just take Yelp, right? Yelp is a type of thing that you would say when it would start out, someone might say, Yelp, you're going to get sued big time, right? And you might have a bunch of lawyers in your analyst group. And then they turn around and say, a bunch of them like, yeah, nope, this is impossible. You're going to go ahead and you're going to get sued for libel. You're going to get sued for this. You might have one of them that says, well, if you do, you dot this line, you cross this T, and you do this, and then you have a bunch of people that kind of just, forestall the threat of you getting sued, and you set it up this way and all that, then you could do it. You can have a real way for people to grade restaurants and all that stuff like that. Right? And so they're the ones that'll tell you no, nope. But some of them might say yeah, but they will kill your idea on the vine because they have experience. But the ones that are good, they or thoughtful or whatever, it's really not just that they're good or bad. They're going to take the hypothesis that you pulled out from the kitchen cabinet, and they're going to apply it to their experience. And not all of them have the same experience. But Yelp is an example. I think Yelp is like might not be true, but I've heard stories that it's 3/4 lawyers in that company. They found a way to not get sued to oblivion. And, I'm sure that that process where they were saying, yeah, that's a word might have been started by a lawyer, but that process where it'll work, they went ahead and, they were able to do it. Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines is started by an attorney. Whenever you start a new airline, you get sued, is the story. And they got sued. And so that's an example of someone having the idea, and then most of them are saying, you can't do this, you can't do this. You try to open up in this area and you get sued for whatever reason. It's something silly. And he was able to dot the I's and cross the T's and do it. So experts are the ones that they've been through it, and they can apply their experience to your idea and give you feedback really quickly. And, I say later in the video, they're the ones that you want to buy lunch for. If you have this type of relationship, they're not going to do your work. You can ask them. They're kind of like, no, I'm busy. They're like a specialist within the field that you're asking about. So an attorney would be a great example, CPA, whatever. If you're good friends with a bunch of attorneys, you can kind of get a lot of free information just by buying them lunch. Same thing could be in software, different fields. If you have ideas in that field, you can get pretty far with just buying people lunch and saying, will this work? Ask them, will this work? And you get the feedback. You get the feedback in a sense of years of experience applied to your idea. That's different than somebody who's, and we're all most likely experienced with just being an agent, which is someone who does the rote work day to day and executes. When somebody has tasks for us, we're able to do them, get paid hourly or whatever. We're familiar with agents. Analysts are the one where it's kind of tough to like, well, what's the difference between that and an agent? Somebody that executes. I was not the same thing as somebody who can give advice. But analysts are the ones that it's really very laser focused feedback. Right. So I was telling Josh earlier, so I program in the programming language Elixir. Right. I've done training in Elixir. But, you know, if it's relative. If you were to ask for expert advice in Elixir, oh, maybe I'll give it to you. If you're the kind of person who's kind of like a startup and you're saying, oh, I want high performance for this and that, I want too many connections simultaneously. Oh, okay, you want this language. But if you need something more than that, you want to talk to Chris McCord or Jose Valim, which is people that create the language or create the libraries. And they're not going to do your work. They have other things to do, but they can tell you if what your hypothesis, they can tell you if it works. If you can get them in your circle, chances are you can't get them in there, so they're not going to answer your question. But if you get to, this is the whole part of building your ecosystem, you have thresholds. And for your analysts, you can get better and better analysts. That's, for me, that's a key component of this system, is paying attention to the different levels. The analysts, I'm pretty sure I got a good understanding of how to grade them and move them. And then agents, of course, people that can execute when they're very responsive. Like I said here, reliability, consistency, efficiency, they deliver. Kitchen cabinets, it's not so obvious. The kinds of people, like I said, that are not killing your stuff on the vine, but people that think outside the box, which I think is kind of a hazy way to define someone or whatever. But, you know, it's that type of thing. Again, diplomacy, emotional support, these types of things, kind of glue kind of thing. So, yeah, at this point, kitchen cabinets kind of like, you know them when you see them. For me, anyways. But in my experience, people undervalue the analysts. They kind of put analysts and agents in the same group. And then kitchen cabinet, there's like, no, I don't need that. I'm the one that comes up with the idea. That's normally what I think people do. So what do you guys think?
I would not agree with that. I think most people have kitchen cabinets. They have people that they're kind of friends with. You know, for myself, it's like my wife, my mother. We can talk about certain things. I've got a couple people that I've been colleagues with for years that I would say more of a kitchen cabinet to me personally. I can talk about a wide range of things that bounce different ideas off, or just kind of casually thinking through things, or sometimes more deeply. Whereas analysts, people I'm reaching out to, and I want to do some sort of like project, or I think they have a certain expertise and they can give me more constructive or direct feedback on that. I see them as more as experts. They're not really doing work for me, but they're just telling me if I'm crazy. And sometimes it's even going out on the internet and getting some feedback from YouTube or whatever. It could be a person. It could be actually like, just doing research. And then, agents has been more like, okay, well, I'm needing a new fence put up and I need people to do it. But we're first talking to my kitchen cabinet about that. And then I'm talking to other people who they've hired people out to do fencing and things like that. But the actual agents to do it is going to be the group I actually hired for it. And even in those types, I have to keep a close watch on them when they're doing it. But I think this is a natural process. We all do this. We all have people who in our kitchen cabinet. We all have people we go to because they're going to tell us, the straight truth as far as they understand it. And people we have to hire for. I mean, I have mechanics. I have, I don't want to work in a car.
Yeah. So you find this pretty intuitive then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So far, let me ask you this then, as far as analysts. So how do you try to increase your analysts? Do you think that there are, like, do you actively try to find somebody that's okay? Let me find somebody in my let me get people that are city class, what I would call city class, and then country level experts, and then world level.
It depends how critical it is to me.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a pair of shoes, that's like kitchen cabinet. Maybe I might ask a friend of mine that does hiking, like if they have any recommendations for hiking shoes, something like that. It
Mm-hmm.
might just be I'm at the shoe shop and I might ask a few questions of the salesperson who's walking by, who's not actually like helping me sell the thing. They're just kind of like, they can give some input and they go on doing their other things, helping other people. I mean, are they an analyst or are they an agent? I think they're more kind of an analyst in that realm. So they're not making shoes. They're barely helping me on the sales process. They're not asking me out. But they give some feedback there. So, but whereas, like professionally, I mean, like, there's times when I'm talking to, currently I'm a development manager. And so sometimes I'm talking to the product owners and we're just kind of having a kitchen cabinet conversation. We're just like bouncing crazy ideas out there. And then I might come over and talk to some people more of an analyst realm of like, is this serious? Do we think we can do this? I might reach out to some of the people who are on the support team or the services team, and they're talking with customers and they're going through all that process there. They're not doing work for me. They're just kind of like doing analysis. But then when it comes to like, we finally have like a plan, and whether you're going through a epics, features, user stories kind of thing, or whatever you're doing, I've done several different types, but then finally we're at the place of like, let's divvy up work and let's do the work. And sometimes I'm the agent, sometimes I'm the idea person, like who's making decisions.
Yeah,
So
I get that.
to me, this is just kind of like a more of a functional way of looking at people, rather than say personality types or temperaments or those kind of things of how a person is.
So let's add something. So this portion right here where it says addressing dilemmas. So dilemma could be this is a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be you are on the horns of a dilemma, an unsolved problem.
Sure.
Like you might think that nobody's solved this problem before, and it could actually be the case that no one solved it before,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be that people have solved it before. But you actually so shoes would be, no, that's a solved problem, right? But 10 million simultaneous connections is to go into something that we're familiar with. That
Sure.
would be something, for a regular group, that's an unsolved problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's an unsolved problem. And so kind of this thing. So for going back to Jim Henson,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be more of a, you're thinking 60s and 70s, and then the film, and then what is in film, and then
Sure.
These types of things. That kind of, no one's done this kind of thing before.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, now using that as a driver, right? So we're not talking, say, let's build an accounting system. Okay, that's a solved problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe it's an unsolved problem with doing it on the level of, say, even a low level QuickBooks with one person. That's
Mm-hmm.
an unsolved problem. No one's done that before, that kind of thing. But no, with the resources and these types of things, you can have certain things that are unsolved problems even with unlimited resources and stuff like that. I think that that's really where it's kind of like more of your life goals. Like, how do you attack things that are going to be influential, make a difference in the world kind of thing. And
Well,
less of
let me give an
Mhm.
example outside of software, because that's home base for me. But
Mhm.
I was, a few years back, my wife and I were complaining because we live in Dallas, Texas, and so we're in this old East Dallas kind of funky little area. My wife loves it here, and it's between downtown Dallas and White Rock Lake. It's an older neighborhood built kind of in the 1920s. So the house was falling apart, and yet when we were looking for someone to kind of rebuild the house, nobody was talking to us. So we talked to people, and they wouldn't. Turns back, the builders wouldn't do it. Finally, she got a hold of somebody, and they were like, "Hey, they would love to help us out, but if we weren't willing to spend north of $350,000 just to get on the docket, there's so much growth, there's so much business going on in Dallas that if we weren't north of $350,000, they couldn't even put us on the docket with it." So we're kind of demoralized about that because our budget was more around, stretching up to 200,000. We were like, that's like the max we could think about doing. And so I was having lunch there with some guys at work, and a good friend of mine was working there, and I was telling him about my problem, and he'd been to my house before, and he goes, "Man, why don't you just knock it down and put a mobile home up?" Just kind of like off the cuff. And I was like, well, because I didn't have an answer. So I went home and talked to my wife about it, and we're kind of bounced this idea of this mobile home. And then she starts doing some research and finds out there's a thing called modular houses versus manufactured houses. And so then we move into this realm of going from just kitchen cabinet, which those people all were for me, to we started looking for analysts. We started looking for, like, hey, we actually traveled out to Tyler, Texas, and ended up visiting 2 different places out there. And um, the first guy I was talking to, and we're talking about different things we want, and he starts getting a little nervous on me, and he goes, "Well, what you're talking about is like, it's like $160,000." So, you know, and he's all like nervous because most of the ones he deals with are in the $70,000-$80,000 range.
Mhm.
I'm coming in there, and I'm looking at him like, where do I sign?
Mhm.
And so it turns out that modular houses are built to the same code. They're not um, done through HUD. They're actually full-on houses. They're just built in a factory somewhere else and driven over here. So then I became the problem of, oh, well, now I have to find if someone can do it in Dallas. And so, because they do most of their stuff outside, and ended up working at a place that actually was in Duncanville, which is about 25 minutes from my house, and talking with them. And then we moved from the analyst phase into the agent phase, and I'm starting signing the thing. And then it became a very different conversation of, it's not about, oh, what ifs and what might not be and what might not work, and can they even get the houses onto my street, which is kind of a small street, and can they handle the slope off and the runoff, all that analyst work. And we actually had one group that came out, and they said no. They were like, that looks too difficult. Another guy came out and for the dirt work and all that, and he was like, yeah. So those were analysts. And then the guy that said yes, he became an agent later on. He became someone who did the work. So I don't know, they kind of moved through the phases with me.
Yeah, I'd take that, like to make that into something that I think that this model is for. If you were a real estate person and you had to solve that problem and problems like it repeatedly, quickly, and you had to adjust, then you would need this personal ecosystem. Like you could go and search, like you said, I can go and search. You have the time, right? And the thing about this is supposed to be you can make better judgment quickly, right? You already have. So thinking about, I mean, like with this guy, with the Jim Henson, and it's okay, you're in Hollywood, you have the agents, you have the people with the individual talent and all that already in your Rolodex. You have the analysts already in your Rolodex. So it could be like funding people or something like that.
Okay.
Right. And so it's like, it's about speed and handling information, like being overwhelmed with information and problems that you have to solve now. Right. And then you have different ideas. That's where the kitchen cabinet comes in, ways to attack all of these dilemmas, but you're having to solve them because of maybe competitive pressure or something like that. But there's pressure on you to solve them quickly. You can't go and just search for the people. You have to have them already. Right. So because other people are doing it and they already have them already. right? Or they have a hierarchy that has all of these people and they're at the top of the hierarchy and they're able to leverage lots of money to pull all these people together, and you don't have that, right? But so they can be fast, but you can't be fast unless you already have this network. So there's a way to say, I'm going to go and fulfill these things, but I'm doing it on my own time. I'm not under pressure. I'm not being overwhelmed with information. But
I'm
if you
sorry, I don't quite understand. Are you showing this and thinking that this is not something people naturally do, or you don't think this is a goal we should be looking
yeah,
for, or you're saying
so
this is a
so for instance,
construct
yeah,
of the world?
so analysts, do people say I'm going to keep a Rolodex of for problems that I am concerned with, like the ones like you said, it depends on if you care about it, how much you care about it. So problems that you care about, right? Do they keep the Rolodex? Do they try to increase the analysts, the level of analysts actively when they move through? Do they like have touch points? Did they come back to them and say, okay, make sure that I can always call this person up, kinds of things, right? That kind of thing. That's keeping the the personal ecosystem lively, right? Getting back with people and all that stuff like that. Knowing what people's schedules are. So you have agents, right? And then they're not under your employment. They could have a full workload. And it's like, oh, it's time for me to do this. Remember, you're under time pressure. Oh, what's your workload like? I've been filled out for a year. You better go get the other person that fails a lot, kind of thing. So that if you don't have a whole bunch of, you don't, for them, remember, this is for problems that you care about, right? This isn't about work in your house, right? Or work on something to where, let me go find a contractor for it, right? There's not a lot, maybe not a lot of time pressure for that. And the exposure isn't great. But say you're working on a movie. Uh-oh, I got time pressure. I got bills. This is $100 million. I need to have the Rolodex fulfilled right now. These people are filled. These people are not. That kind of thing. And there's competitive pressure too. Okay? So I think it's about those. I think those thresholds are all part of the personal ecosystem. Without those, like maybe one of them being competitive pressure, I think without those, then it is a process that you can go and do it leisurely. You can go down this, and it is intuitive. You know, I mean, like, just think about, I don't know about within your own personal, but within my personal, we have, let's say, we're doing projects on networking, and then we have certain people, like physical, like technological networking, like switches and routers and all that. We have certain people that we have within our circle that we go and ask questions about, and we work on this stuff. But there could be other people that we could be reaching out to and keeping, that we could ask questions to, about what we're doing to solve these problems that are unsolved problems. Will they work? Will they not work? And all that. So that's something that we could be doing. As far as like the analyst portion, I'm concerned with that. The kitchen cabinet portion, the kinds of people that kill your ideas on the vine, it's like most people do that. People that when they're time for brainstorming, they just, unless they are in a certain mindset and you really are strict about it, they're kind of like that. That's in my experience. People are just like, that won't work. You have to actively, consciously, really try not to. That's what I found. But some people aren't that way. They think, like my mom would be, oh yeah, whatever you come up with will work. So but that's what I found. I'm not saying everybody, people can do this stuff naturally. I'm just saying that's not what I found. Is anybody else? Anything? Just it's all intuitive or counterintuitive or what?
I think it's intuitive. And also, I think it's easier when you don't assign all 3 roles to one person for too long, because it can get overwhelming. I guess this is outside of software, but one example where I was in all 3 roles in a very intense way was being maid of honor for my friend's wedding. And so I was kitchen cabinet, providing emotional support, addressing dilemmas. I was an analyst trying to help her find a caterer, help her find someone to officiate the wedding. And I was an agent taking care of tasks. And that was like, let's just go back to kitchen cabinet for after that. It's too much to be all the things. So being in that situation, I would try not to assign all 3 roles to someone for too long of a time without a break, because it is a lot to handle at once.
Yeah. Seeing a trend here, project managers think this is intuitive. They have to go through this, I guess, more than. Think about people that are entrepreneurs, that identify as entrepreneurs. That it seems to me that they put all 3. They like to put all 3 in the same. The good ones maybe not, but it's I'm starting to see some trends here.
Do you have any thoughts on how this relates to cooperative specifically versus any other groups?
Yeah, flat. So traditional, the one of the comments in the book was, when you just add people in a hierarchy, it's slow. So say you have a business and traditional hierarchy, right? And you're saying, oh, I need, a software person. I need somebody, you're trying to add people that are analysts basically, or you're trying to add people that are agents, and you're treating the analysts and agents as the same. And it's very slow and very expensive. The hiring process is very slow. While for instance, let's say you have a security issue and you just get hacked and you die. That would be really slow, or you're getting hit by 2 or 3 things at the same time. Whereas flat organizations, the problem is being overwhelmed with information. So it's like, okay, within a cooperative or any other flat or organically formed organization or decentralized organization, it's like the people are thinking about, wait a minute, how do I bill? Wait a minute, what are the bylaws? How do I vote? How do I, how am I going to retire? How am I going to get healthcare? How am I going to learn how to move to the next, what's my career path? Where, what am I going to be doing next year? How are we getting new business? What's accounting all about? Do I need to vote on how we do accounting? Do I need to, there's a whole massive, overwhelming thing, and kind of joking because we know people are like this, but information overload. And so when you're in a flat org, you have more of responsibility that's just forced on you to try to solve problems with your own ecosystem. You could have certain people that you need to go to, and then they could have these different levels, right? So if you have certain problems, you're somebody that wants to, you can go back to software, you can go to anything, but you have certain initiatives that you want to move through. You have your kitchen cabinet and you're trying to solve dilemmas and all that stuff. People that are the best, we're talking about, I got to do my taxes. Do I want to do something special? Do I need a tax attorney? Do I just need a CPA? These types of things. Do I do my own taxes? Those types of things. Maybe that's not the best example because it's kind of a solved problem, but there's different, structures that you could have where, they are a little bit different. So you might use the analyst for and then not have to pay a whole bunch. You buy them lunch and they say, go down this path. And then you go to the regular CPA and say, okay, this is what I want to do. I was thinking about this. And you ask them to set you up the right way or whatever individually. This is all for flat orgs, right? So you have your own you have your own structure, you have your own all types of things that you need to solve. Otherwise, you're pushing it all on to somebody else to do everything for you, kind of thing, and think for you, basically. So that's where it's related. And of course, you know, cooperatives are more involved with, like I was saying in the end, you're more involved with more of the ethical questions and things like that. So you're kind of outside of your org as well. So you should have your little tentacles out in your community and stuff like that, to where you extend outside of your org. So you should be posing questions to them and figuring things out and engaging outside in other things, to where you have other initiatives and things like that, community things that you're involved with and stuff like that. So anybody else? All right, we're getting at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this.